Microsoft has just announced the most sweeping changes to Windows 11 since the operating system launched in 2021. A movable taskbar, stripped back AI, fewer forced restarts, faster File Explorer, reduced memory usage, and the first real acknowledgement from Microsoft that things went seriously wrong. This is a course correction, and it took years of failure, mounting user backlash, and a market share reversal that genuinely alarmed people inside the company before any of this happened. Windows 11 launched in October 2021 with a promise: a cleaner, more modern, more secure operating system for a new era of personal computing. Microsoft redesigned the Start menu, centered the taskbar, introduced new hardware requirements, including a TPM 2.0 chip, and pointed everyone toward the future. And the problem is that a lot of users looked at that future and decided they did not want to live there. For the first couple of years, the market share numbers were uncomfortable but explainable. Windows 10 was stable, familiar, and widely loved. Change is hard, especially when the hardware requirements lock out millions of older but functional machines. That part was understandable, even if frustrating. But something shifted between 2024 and 2025. And it was not just resistance to change. Windows 11 itself started losing the trust of people who had already upgraded. According to market data tracked by StatCounter, which draws on over 3.8 billion page views per month across 1.5 million websites, Windows 11 hit a market share high of around 53 to 55% in mid to late 2025, then fell. By December 2025, it had dropped back to roughly 50%. In that same window, Windows 10's share grew, despite the fact that Microsoft had officially ended support for Windows 10 in October 2025. Let that sink in for a moment. After Windows 10 reached its end of support date, meaning it no longer receives routine security updates, users were still choosing to stay on it or move back to it, rather than commit to Windows 11. That is an extraordinary signal of how much trust had eroded. The reasons were not mysterious. Users and IT professionals were loud and specific about what was wrong. Performance had degraded compared to Windows 10. File Explorer, the basic file management interface that almost every Windows user touches dozens of times a day, was running more slowly. The right-click context menu had become sluggish. Microsoft acknowledged these performance issues in mid-2025, which was itself a notable moment, the company publicly admitting that its own flagship operating system was slower than its predecessor for everyday tasks. Beyond performance, there were update problems. Multiple rounds of Patch Tuesday updates, the monthly security and quality patches Microsoft ships, introduced new bugs instead of fixing old ones. The January 2026 update cycle was particularly damaging, with reports of Outlook crashes and OneDrive failures that required emergency fixes. Microsoft's own quality assurance process had developed a visible gap, and users were living with the consequences. Then there was the AI. When Microsoft began embedding its AI assistant, Copilot, right into every corner of Windows 11, the company framed it as the future of computing. An always available AI that could help you draft documents, search your files, answer questions, and streamline your workflow. The vision was ambitious. The execution created one of the biggest PR crises in Windows history. The problem was not the idea of AI on the desktop. The problem was the way Microsoft deployed it. Copilot icons began appearing across virtually every built-in application: Notepad, Photos, the snipping tool, widgets, and more. On widescreen monitors, Copilot launched automatically. Its icon was permanently pinned to the taskbar and could not be removed through standard settings. Updates pushed Copilot deeper into the operating system without asking whether users wanted it there. The tech community's reaction was swift and harsh. Developers on platforms like Hacker News described the approach as a complete failure of governance. Senior editors at major tech publications used the word "enshittification" in published reporting, a term meaning the deliberate degradation of a product to serve the company's interests over the users. Windows President Pavan Davuluri published a blog post in November 2025, describing Microsoft's vision of Windows as an agentic OS, meaning an AI-driven operating system that could take actions on your behalf. The post received 1.5 million views and such a volume of negative replies from developers and users that the comments were eventually locked. Meanwhile, the AI feature Microsoft had staked the most on, Windows Recall, which was designed to create a searchable visual history of everything you do on your PC, launched after a year-long delay in April 2025, and security researchers were still finding vulnerabilities in it afterward. Even inside Microsoft, warnings were issued to users not to rely on Copilot and tools like Excel for tasks requiring accuracy, due to the risk of AI-generated errors. The Copilot push had another measurable cost: system resources. Users reported increased boot times and higher memory usage on machines that had not changed, tied directly to the AI components running in the background. For a company already fighting accusations that Windows 11 was slower than Windows 10, piling AI overhead on top was the wrong move. Something had to give. And in March 2026, it did. Pavan Davaluri, the same executive who had written the Agentic OS post that sparked a firestorm, published a new blog post. This one read very differently. He wrote that he and his team had spent months listening to the community about how they would like to see Windows improved. The message they received was clear: users care about Windows and want it to be better. What followed was one of the most concrete and user-responsive announcements Microsoft has made about Windows 11 in years. Let's go through the specific commitments. The taskbar is moving, finally. Since Windows 11 launched, one of the most persistent complaints has been the removal of the ability to move the taskbar. In Windows 10, you could dock the taskbar to the top, left, right, or bottom of your screen. Windows 11 locked it to the bottom and would not budge. For years, this single missing feature drove forum complaints, workarounds, and third-party apps. Microsoft is now restoring it. Starting with testing in April 2026, users will be able to move the taskbar to the top and sides of the screen. Copilot is being scaled back. Microsoft has confirmed it will reduce Copilot integration starting with Notepad, Photos, the snipping tool, and widgets. The company is adopting what it is calling a more intentional approach, focusing AI where it is genuinely useful rather than embedding it everywhere by default. This is a meaningful reversal of the strategy that defined the past 2 years. The Copilot icon has already been removed from the taskbar by default in recent builds, and automatic Copilot launch on widescreen monitors has been disabled. Ads in the Start menu are being reduced. Microsoft has been inserting promotional content into the recommended section of the Start menu, which users found invasive and unprofessional. The company is now reducing these and making it easy to disable them entirely. Windows Update is getting more user control. This is a big one. Microsoft is introducing the ability to restart or shut down your computer without being forced to install updates first. Users will be able to pause updates for longer periods. And the number of mandatory restarts is being reduced. For anyone who has ever been interrupted in the middle of work by a Windows update demanding a restart, this is a meaningful quality of life improvement. File Explorer is being sped up. Microsoft is targeting faster launch times, reduced visual flicker, and smoother navigation in File Explorer. This directly addresses one of the longest-running performance complaints about Windows 11 versus Windows 10. Memory usage is being reduced. Microsoft engineers are working on reducing Windows 11's baseline memory footprint, with early testing pointing toward potential improvements that would particularly benefit machines running with 8 GB of RAM or less. Background processes, including those related to telemetry and diagnostic services, are being throttled more aggressively. Boot times are a target. Microsoft has stated an aim to cut cold boot times through optimized driver loading and background service management. Dark mode is being completed. Windows 11 has had inconsistent dark mode coverage since launch. Some dialogues in Windows would flash white even on dark mode configurations. File Explorer's dark mode has been significantly extended, and Microsoft is committed to covering more components throughout the year. Agentic AI is being made opt-in. Windows 11 will gain what Microsoft calls agentic capabilities, the ability for AI assistants to carry out multi-step tasks on your behalf in a separate environment. But crucially, these capabilities will be off by default. Users will have to manually enable them. That is a direct response to the backlash against forced AI integration. The rollout is being managed through the Windows Insider program first, with testing starting in March and April 2026. And broader availability expected across the rest of the year through monthly updates. There is genuine reason for optimism here. The specific nature of these commitments is different from what Microsoft has offered before. The movable taskbar is not vague, it is a concrete, testable feature. The Copilot rollback from named applications is verifiable. The update control improvements are the kind of change that users will feel in their daily experience. There is also a business logic driving this that makes follow-through more likely. Windows 10's free extended security updates run through October 2026, meaning there is still a window in which users on Windows 10 can stay safe without upgrading. If Microsoft does not make Windows 11 meaningfully better before that window closes, then it faces a user base that may feel trapped rather than invited. That is not a position any software company wants. The competitive pressure is also real. macOS has gained users. Linux adoption has grown, with reports indicating a significant increase in Linux installs over recent years. Gaming platforms like SteamOS have begun closing the performance gap with Windows for PC gaming. Microsoft cannot take its dominance for granted the way it once could, and the leadership knows it. But there are legitimate reasons for caution too. Windows 11 has a pattern. Microsoft made quality commitments in September 2025, and then the January 2026. Patch Tuesday delivered one of the worst update cycles in recent memory. The organizational challenge of consistently shipping quality updates across an operating system used by hundreds of millions of devices remains enormous. The QA team reductions that happened in prior years created systemic gaps that a blog post cannot instantly close. The other thing worth noting is what the March 2026 announcement did not include. There was no acknowledgement of specific past failures. The forced Microsoft account requirement at setup, something developers and privacy advocates have consistently criticized, was not addressed. And the pattern of surprise changes delivered without opt-in remains a cultural habit that a single announcement may not break. What Microsoft needs to deliver is not a good April or even a good second quarter. It needs to demonstrate through the rest of 2026 the quality first signal is a sustained operational shift rather than a response to a bad news cycle. Windows 11 is a turning point. That much is clear. The market share reversal, the developer backlash, the Copilot retreat, and the taskbar restoration are not isolated events. They are data points in a pattern that finally became too loud for Microsoft to ignore. The changes announced in March 2026 are, by the standards of recent Windows history, significant. These are the kinds of changes that the Windows community has been asking for, in some cases since 2021. Whether Microsoft executes is the only question left.